My name is John Dennis Bradley, D-E-N-N-I-S for my middle name, B-R-A-D-L-E-Y for my last name.
Thank you. Sir, how are you employed?
I'm self-employed.
In what capacity?
I'm the owner of SciQuest, a software development company.
Okay. And how long has that company been in existence?
Officially since 2001.
Okay. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, education, employment prior to the formation of the company?
I'm a former law enforcement officer in Ontario, Canada. I was employed with the Durham Regional Police Service from 1988 through to and including April 2006. I spent 10 years in uniform, and then I was transferred into the Major Crime Branch, where I led the Technological Crimes Unit. My background in training involves several courses at the Canadian Police College in relation to computer forensics. I attended the Canadian Police College for advanced investigator training, as well as professional training outside of the law enforcement community.
Okay. That takes us up through what year?
That spans up most of my career. In 2000, I was transferred into major crime. In the year 2005, after spending 5 years in that unit, conducting several investigations, I was promoted to the rank of sergeant, at which time I was transferred back to uniform in charge of a platoon of officers in another division. Following a 10-month period, approximately, I left law enforcement and took up a position with the Scotiabank as a director in charge of technological crimes and investigations. All during this time, I had started a software development company in 2001 under a different name. At that time, I believe it was called Armor Data, and it was a purpose to distribute software that I had begun developing while I was a police officer. And at the time that I was now with the Scotiabank, I found that banking was not of interest for me, and it didn't fulfill my desires to further my abilities in the computer forensic industry. So I quit the banking field, and I subcontracted for a couple of months doing computer forensic investigations involved in criminal defense, criminal prosecution, and litigation. And after about 2 or 3 months, I decided to form a full-time business. I renamed Armor Data, which was a part-time business, to a full-time business conducting primarily computer forensic services for litigation purposes, and a smaller focus on the software development, which was continual throughout that whole period. Approximately 2 years ago, the increase in demand for my software actually made me change the focus of the company to do about 95% software development and training in the field of computer forensics and 5% on actual professional services.
Right. In connection with your employment as a police officer in Canada, did you ever have the opportunity to testify as an expert witness in the field of computer forensics?
Yes, I have.
Okay. In what jurisdictions besides those in Canada?
It would be, the only ones I testified were within Ontario, Canada.
Okay. In connection with your company, have you had the opportunity to testify as an expert witness?
Yes, I have, on a criminal defense case in the city of Toronto. That was approximately 2 years ago.
Okay. Your Honor, at this point, I would tender the witness for voir dire or submit as an expert in the field of computer forensics.
No objection, sir.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the witness will be accepted as an expert witness in forensic computer analysis. You may continue.
What sort of software have you developed that allows the interpretation of internet search history?
I have a product called Cashback right now. Its main focus is for the analysis of internet cache and history and cookies in relation to the browsers commonly used today by people to surf the internet.
Okay. Can you give us an explanation of what the cache is?
The cache is spelled C-A-C-H-E, which is a play on terms. It's stored or hidden copies of information when you're actively on the internet. The internet cache is a temporary folder or series of folders, ideally, to store information to make it easier and faster to navigate the internet so that the browser can look to the cache to see if it can fulfill a request much more quickly than having to go back out onto the internet to get that information. The purpose of the software is to extract that information, in many cases decode certain information within those files, and present them in a fashion that an investigator can investigate the actual information and draw opinions, inferences, or conclusions about what has taken place.
Okay. Does the cashback program that you've developed compensate for time changes?
Yes, it does. A lot of the components or properties within the cache and history are stored in a variety of different time formats, which are generally stored in universal coordinated time, or GMT, and that conversion process has to then account for time zones, particularly where the actual offense took place. So my software does take that into account, and it's a configurable option.
Do you do teaching?
Yes, I do.
Okay, give us a little bit of background on your teaching experience.
While I was still a police officer, I spent 2 years instructing NCASE Advanced Internet Forensics for Guidance Software, a California-based company. I did that for approximately 2 years. I instructed law enforcement, private sector, corporate individuals. After that actually was along the lines of the time I actually left policing to go to the bank. I have developed a forensic course for our local community college, Durham College, and instructed that for 1 semester. I have also developed my own training curriculum for my software. It's called Advanced Internet Forensics. I've instructed several courses over the last 2 years for that to several law enforcement government agencies. And I also am sometimes a guest speaker at events such as techno-security conferences and techno-forensics.
Okay. In connection then with your teaching engagements, did you teach the advanced computer forensics regarding your cashback program to members of the Orange County Sheriff's Office sometime in the last 2 years?
Yes, I did. December 8th, I believe, to the 10th of 2009. I was in Orlando at the University of Central Florida. They have a special lab there for the U.S. Secret Service, and I was instructing a course at that time.
Okay. Did you meet an individual by the name of Kevin Stenger?
Yes, I did.
Did Sergeant Stenger ask you to take a look at a data file?
Yes, he did.
Okay. Tell us about the item that he asked you to look at.
Sergeant Stenger indicated to me that he had a file on a thumb drive that was part of an investigation. The information in that file was recovered contiguously from a hard drive in relation to a matter. And he explained to me that the
Exception?
Your Honor, this is an expert witness. He's utilizing information provided as to the history of the file that was given to him in order to evaluate and complete his analysis. He's allowed to rely on hearsay information initially to start that procedure.
Objection overruled.
I'm sorry, I've forgotten the question now.
I think I generally asked you what information was given to you and what you were asked to do with it.
He explained to me that what was of interest within this block of data, he explained two things. Number one, the block of data was apparently from a Firefox 2. This is a type of browser, and the 2 being the version number. There are certain characteristics about that made him come to that conclusion, and he explained that to me. Within the body of the information he recovered, there was some plain text information. And one of the keywords that were of interest to him that he explained to me was of interest was the word chloroform.
Okay. Now, you said something about contiguous information. Why was that important to you?
The importance of information being contiguous relates more importantly to the location on the hard drive where it was recovered. In this case, an area of the hard drive commonly referred to in the forensic industry as unallocated clusters simply means it's a portion of the hard drive that is not being used and is not allocated for use for any file. Information that is deleted ends up in this area of the hard drive and is subject to being overwritten, either sooner than later, sometimes not for a long time. And what was interesting about this information was that the header, the beginning signature of that data block, and the contents within the footer in between was apparently all intact. Why that is important is when you find information in unallocated space, the number of contiguous allocation units, the greater the number, the less likelihood you'll get an intact file. In this case here, a number of clusters had to have been allocated for this file, this data block, and I was impressed to learn that it was all intact.
Okay. How was the information actually provided to you? I believe you referenced a thumb drive.
That is correct.
Okay. Did you examine the contents of the thumb drive?
I copied the contents onto my forensic workstation that I had with me at the time, and I believe I returned the thumb drive to him, and I worked from the workstation or the laptop from that point forward.
Okay. Were you able to verify the information that was initially provided to you as to what they were looking at when you reviewed the file?
Yes, I did. I initially conducted a cursory review to get a visual appreciation as to how the information was organized. And from a visual perspective, taking my time to scroll through the entire file, it appeared to be correct. And I was able to locate a keyword, chloroform, within the body of that information.
Okay. Now, you had, in the earlier part of your testimony, referenced the header and the footer that was part of this contiguous bit of information. Was that replicated on the data that you copied?
That information was present, yes.
What was the size of the data file that was retrieved from the unallocated space?
I recall the file being approximately 3.2 megabytes or 3.2 million bytes. A byte would be equivalent to a character.
Okay. Were you able to draw any conclusions about the deleted file from its size?
The conclusion or my belief at that time was that based on the size of the file and the fact that it was recovered from unallocated space, a level of inactivity in some fashion must have taken place for that information to not have been overwritten. Now, I'll qualify that by saying that other factors come into play about when data in unallocated space is actually overwritten. It varies from the use of the computer by the users or user, the size of the hard drive, and the number of applications that are being used, and how much disk space is actually currently allocated to the operating system. But based on that information, I was impressed to find that it was actually recoverable.
Is there any way, given the information that was provided to you, to tell when that Internet history record was deleted?
I can't say when it was deleted.
Okay. Do you know if Mozilla Firefox has any automatic deletion of its Internet history once it reaches a certain size or a certain date?
The browser will not delete the entire history when it reaches a threshold. That version of the Mozilla Firefox browser did not come with any automated or pre-default privacy mode either.
All right. From your answer, can we conclude that the history would have had to have been deleted manually?
Yes.
Once you did your preliminary review of the information provided to you, what was your next step?
My next step was to, within the development environment of the software I happen to have on my workstation, run it through an enormous number of tests to try and figure out what the issues were that it couldn't be originally parsed or decoded. So over the course of the next 3 days, I actually spent a lot of time looking at it at a very small piece of information at a time to see what were the characters that I needed to deal with to try and decode it. And essentially, I spent a lot of time trying to understand how this was different from anything else and work around that from a development perspective to decode it.
All right. After spending that period of time with the information, were you able to parse or decode it?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and how were you able to do that?
I was able to write or improve the functions within the software to deal with some anomalies that were present in this file and run it through a number of repeated tests to make sure that it was parsed. I was able to corroborate the work that I had done using a third-party reliable software to account for all of the markers that would tell me how many records I should be finding.
Does the cashback program generate a report?
Yes, it does.
If I may approach the witness?
You may.
What has been introduced into evidence as states 165 and 166. Would you recognize 165 in evidence as a portion of the cashback report filtered for the date of March 17th of 2008?
Yes, I recognize this as a cashback report with information dated on that date. Appears to be a cashback report.
Same for 166 in evidence. Do you recognize that as the same filtered for the date of March 21st of 2008?
Yes, with the exception of one entry at the start for the 20th.
May I publish 165 in evidence to the jury during the witness's testimony?
You may. Any objections from the defense?
It's being entered into evidence, though, isn't it?
I know. It's already in evidence. I thought maybe you may have some additional objections. Just asked. I'm just wondering whether or not you have any additional objections.
None, sir.
Okay. You may publish.
We could zoom into the first entry on the report. All right, Mr. Bradley, can you tell us what is displayed at the top of the report and what each of those items mean?
I have a portion that seems to superimpose over top of a report. Is that the portion you're referring to?
Yes, the superimposed portion that we zoomed into.
This is a single row entry in the report with some headers or column header information. The first column is an index. It's simply a value that numbers all of the results. The URL ID is a primary key database value to correspond to the actual file that now houses the decoded results. The type column is a visual representation of the type of browser from which the data was extracted. The visits column represents the number of times that particular URL was visited. The action date local is the converted timestamp to the local time as to when this URL record was accessed. The user column is in cases of where a user value has been extracted from the cache.
Would that be because it was in unallocated space?
No, the user value is reserved for Internet Explorer. It is the only browser that actually stores the user profile for the activity. By default here it's Firefox, so it will be blank. The web page title, if there was one associated to the URL, and then the actual URL or universal resource locator or web address, which relates to the record entry.
Okay. If we could go to, I believe it's entry 441. Okay. What information is being imparted by the cashback report as it relates to entry 441?
It appears that a web address or a URL, as defined here, http://www.google.com, was accessed on the 17th of March 2008 at 2:43 p.m. and 34 seconds daylight savings time.
All right. This number next to it, 92, what is that indicative of?
That's the number of times that particular web address or URL was accessed.
Accessed
Visited.
within what time frame?
In the scope or the parameters of the data that I extracted.
Okay. How does Google search work?
Google search.
Yes,
You
sir.
arrive at the Google homepage. There's a single text box to input keywords. Depending on how those keywords are entered, will help make your results more accurate, thereby reducing the number of results. By entering your keywords, you simply click on the search button, and a request goes out onto the internet to the google.com server. The parameters or keywords that were typed in are submitted along with your request. The request is fulfilled, and anything relating to the results is then sent back.
Okay. Would the result show in the internet history, the result of the search?
Yes?
In what format?
It would create another entry, a line item in the actual history.
Okay. Can we see the rest of the page? All right. Once that is accessed, the Google website, do the entries after Google is accessed provide us with any information about what search was conducted and when?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury how you can tell that through the use of this report?
By referring to the first line entry as an example, I see the term search that follows the google.com domain or URL. The question mark depicts keyword and value pairs that should follow, which are the conditions of the query, the conditions that you were asking to be fulfilled. In this case here, after the question mark, I see the term HLEN, followed by an ampersand. HL represents home language, and EN stands for English. The item that follows SA equals X. I don't understand in this particular example what that would be off the top of my head. It's delimited by another ampersand, followed by, it's hard to see, I think it's a 0, is spell, looks like OI, and then spell. So the OI would be equal to spell. The following item is RES, and the value is number. And as you follow along, there's an ampersand Q, followed by the word chloroform, and then lastly, ampersand spell 1.
Okay. So what information does this provide?
Some of this information, in fact, a lot of it, is provided by the server when the request is fulfilled. The important part about a Google search is the actual keyword value pair that starts with Q. In this case here, Q represents query, and the value would be chloroform, as you see it there. The ampersand spell 1 suggests to me that this was a value presented in the results that said, did you mean, or do you want to look for this term instead of what you actually wanted to search for? That item was clicked on, and that produced this result here.
Okay. Does the next entry, which is 443, provide any different information to you?
Yes, it does.
How so?
I'm sorry?
How so?
The first thing that I remark is the exact value of the timestamps. They're identical. The Q condition in this case is chloroform spelled CHLORAFORM as opposed to O, and it does not end in the ampersand spell 1. This suggests to me that that was the first item entered as the keyword, spelt with the A in chloroform, which then produced the results above it.
I'm sorry, produce the results?
Above it.
Okay. All right. When you have entries that are showing as the exact same time, are they shown in some chronological fashion?
The report in cashback will sort first by timestamp and then second on the actual URL. It doesn't necessarily represent the chronology in which the events truly took place. The nature of web browsers and the internet is asynchronous. Therefore, one has to take a second look when the timestamps are the same and try and extrapolate some sense as to what took place.
Okay. If the timestamp is different, meaning that there's some distinction as we see with entry 444, which ends in 48 rather than 41, can we conclude that those are in the correct chronological order?
Yes.
Since the timestamp is different?
Yes.
Okay. Going then to 444, looking at that entry, can you draw any conclusions as to what that is?
This is a URL that has been added in behind the scenes for tracking the user's behavior or activity. In this case here, add.doubleclick.net is notorious for tracking user activities, more for statistical and advertising purposes.
All right. Would that result in a pop-up, or is that just one of those
This would
cookies?
This would be a background information within the history itself.
Okay. Are those inserted at various points in time in the internet history?
They are inserted as they occur or as they are requested. Due to the fact that tracking software tends to be taxing, or there is a time issue related to the tracking software sometimes calling home and reporting the information and then coming back. So it's not unusual to see some seconds gone by between different adwares or ad tracking software.
Okay. In this record from the 17th, do you see several examples of this sort of background information infiltrating, for lack of a better word, the internet search history?
Yes, I do. Item number 445, although I'm not familiar with that particular domain, it has the same characteristics of a tracking component to it.
Okay. If we could go to the next page. Okay, is the entry at 4, I'm not talking about the time, I'm talking about the entry on the left column, 446, one of those background entries that you were just discussing?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So at 447, is that the same thing or is that something different?
I believe that is also the same thing.
Okay. How would that, since MySpace is included within there, how would that appear to the user?
This would not appear to the user necessarily as you see it. I would believe that a lot of this information is driven by cookies on the system, and when the adware recognizes certain types of information, it will respond accordingly. In this case here, there may have been a auto login or something off to the side on the Google homepage in response to just the user's activity.
Okay. If we can continue to the bottom half of the page.
Excuse me.
Okay. In entry 456 at the very bottom, on March 17th, 2008, 14:45 hours and 30 seconds. Is that something happening in the background?
No, this appears to be a typed or a bookmarked URL.
Okay. And that is for?
Photobucket.com.
Okay. Is that the bottom of the page? Okay. Can we go to the next page, please? Okay. As we continue down this report, do you see activity on the Photobucket website?
Yes, I do.
Where at?
Items, I believe 457, 458, 459, 460, 461, and 462.
Once you get past activity with Photobucket, at 463 at the bottom, there's another entry at 1,453 hours and 25 seconds. What is that entry?
This states http://en. I apologize. http://en.wikipedia.org/wiki, WIKI/CHLOROFORM, chloroform.
What is that?
This appears to be a item in the search results from Google that were selected, and this caused the entry to be inputted into the history.
at the end of the page. If we can scroll down on the page, including that entry within the certain. Okay. As you continue down the report, entries 464 through the end at 471, can you tell us what's happening on the computer?
Just need a moment here to look at your timestamps.
Yes, sir.
At line item 2, number 464, it appears that another search results ending in alcohol at wikipedia.org was selected at 2:54 p.m. and 26 seconds. And by that process, actually, I will go to the next item, 465.
Yes,
It would
sir.
appear to me that that item was selected first. It is a URL that seems to support the search results, and by process of selecting line item 465, the return was item 464, the wikipedia.org URL ending in alcohol.
Okay. Can you tell us if 465 is a Google search utilizing a certain search term?
I believe what this is, and I'll actually go back to the original question about how a search is done. When you commit a search, information is brought back to you with results, and those results can have the same syntax or format as a query that you yourself created. And what that does is it recommits. If you click on a search result, it'll recommit that information as if you had typed it yourself to have that request fulfilled. And in this case here, the search results, as you hover over a hyperlink, it could be a picture, it could have a title of an article. Underneath there, the instructions will look similar to what you see here on the screen.
Okay. So looking at this history sequentially, can you tell us what the user was doing?
Yes, I believe at item 465 was a search result where the query value was alcohol. That returned the value listed in item 464. Can I point on this?
There is a annotation device on the screen. If you touch it, it will show up as a colored line.
This result caused that result, or that result caused that result. This result caused that result. This result caused this result. And I believe this result caused that result.
Okay. Is this active user activity clicking through items that are presenting themselves on the screen?
Yes.
Okay. If we could go to the next page, if that is at the end. And we can clear this. All right, as we continue in chronological fashion, can you tell us what's happening on this computer?
The line item 472 may be another tie-in to the prior page.
Yes, sir.
Item 473 at 2:57 p.m. and 44 seconds appears to be a separate result that ended in a visit to wikipedia.org ending in inhalation. Similarly, 474 at 2:58 p.m. and 11 seconds, a result at Wikipedia also was created accessing a file called death or value death. And as the chronology continues at 2:58 p.m. and 38 seconds at item 475, again, wikipedia.org, ending in self-defense. Can I draw on this again?
Certainly.
I believe this caused this result. Line item 476, one of the search results ended in the creation of the page that was displayed at the self-defense URL.
When you see in one of these lines where it says search, and then you have terms with plus signs between them, is that of any importance?
Excuse me. The plus sign is an encoding that's done automatically, and it replaces a space value.
Okay. Would that suggest to you that those are words typed in?
No, not necessarily. I
Okay.
believe what we're looking at here are auto-created links from the original Google search results. And again, by allowing those results to go out, fetch the information, come back, it takes on the same similarities as if someone created the query manually. So you'll see similar syntax with the question mark.
Okay.
In this case here, self-defense may have been an auto-created keyword based on users who might have typed in similar or related articles or keywords.
Okay. As we go down the page, can you tell us what's happening on this computer?
Yes, at line item 477, 2:58 p.m. and 58 seconds, a URL from the search results was selected, again, visiting the wikipedia.org website, ending in RBSD. I do not know what that would be.
Okay.
Line item 478 at 2:59 p.m. and 8 seconds. Again, it's wikipedia.org, ending in hand-to-hand combat. And I believe that would also be a search results link that was selected.
Can we get the rest of the page displayed for the witness, including 479?
Excuse me.
Thank you. Let me clear that. All right, if you can just continue on it in like fashion and tell us what's happening on this computer.
At line item 479, at 3 p.m. and 4 seconds, a search results was selected, which appears to have generated the following item, 480, at 3 p.m. and 14 seconds, which is again at the Wikipedia website, ending in head injuries. Actually, I got ahead of myself. Can I erase that, please?
Hold on. There you go.
Thank you. I believe this item here caused that item. 481 appears to have caused 480 to be entered. And shall I continue down the list?
Yes, please.
482 at 3 p.m. and 26 seconds appears to be a wikipedia.org URL ending in head_injury. The next item, 483, at 3:02 p.m. and 8 seconds, again at the wikipedia.org website, ending in middle_meningeal artery. Line item 484 at 3:03 p.m. and 54 seconds. Again, wikipedia.org, URL ending in ruptured spleen. And 4:85 at 3:04 p.m. and 28 seconds. Again, wikipedia.org, website URL ending in chest trauma. And then line item 486 at 3:04 p.m. and 56 seconds appears to be a search results listing wikipedia.org with the search term of internal bleeding, which I believe then caused the following line item, 487, at the same timestamp.
Can we continue with the display, including 487 within the parameters? Okay, we'll start with 488. All right, once that series is gone through by the user, we have these page add to displayed. What is that?
These appear to be Google Ads or AdWords advertisements of some sort that have found their way into there automatically.
Okay. So then as we go down to 490,
Excuse me.
to the end, are these continuous ad pop-ups, or do we have actual activity on the computer?
I would not refer to them as pop-ups.
I'm sorry.
I would refer them as stuff that has just found their way into the history automatically.
Aside from those entries, then, is there other activity that is going on the screen?
Yes, item 490 at 3:05 p.m. and 17 seconds, a link to articleworld.org referencing a item called internal bleeding. Line item 492 at 3:05 p.m. and 47 seconds. Again, the wikipedia.org website referencing a URL item ending in hypovolemia.
Okay. Can we display 495 on the next page, I believe, and below? Let me clear that annotation. What are these from 495 through 501?
I believe these are all auto-created adware or ad items, advertisements, I should say. And also, I see an item there, line 498, referencing myspace.com. I don't know exactly what it refers to, but it seems to appear to have been created automatically in reference to perhaps a cookie stored on the user system.
Okay, if we can go to 502.
Stop before we continue.
Yes, sir.
All right, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we're going to take a 15-minute recess at this time. I'm going to ask you not to discuss this case among yourselves nor with anyone else. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes. Okay, state recognized presence of jury.
Yes, Your Honor.
The defense.
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay, you may continue.
All right, Mr. Bradley, I believe that where we left off, we were talking about entry number 502. Perhaps we can go 502, 3, 4, and 5, and if you could tell us what's happening there.
Again, these appear to be auto-generated either ad or tracking URLs to the history.
If we could display 506 through 510. Same for those entries.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And then if we could go to 511. Okay. What activity is showing on the computer with this entry in the sequence?
Excuse me. This appears to be a facebook.com URL ending in reqs.php. It appears to be an item that was accessed by a hyperlink that was perhaps saved as a bookmark.
Okay. Active user activity to,
I believe this is user activity versus something auto-generated.
okay. The number 8
The number of times visited,
since,
historically up until 1650-44. Actually, I will clarify that. Insofar as the contents of the file that I actually analyzed, there, from that URL, that number of times it was visited is 8. It's basically a counter for that particular entry.
okay, that is 511. If we could display 512.
This appears to be some type of auto-generated item.
Okay.
And I can't explain what it actually refers to, except there's the word view, and I also see the beginning letters MSN right here, and the word view.
Okay.
Again, this because the syntax or the difficult construct of this item, I would believe that this is auto-generated.
If we could display 513 through the end of the page. Would this be auto-generated as well?
These two, yes. These two, yes. This one here
515?
may have been visited by result of selecting a hyperlink or auto-generated as well. I can't say for sure.
Okay.
If I could just further that, I just see the words here, read message, and a token value. So I don't know if that is automatically submitted based on a cookie value, but I can't say for sure.
Okay, if we can display 517 through 519.
Excuse me.
Can you tell if this is, again, the auto-generated signature in the URL?
This one here, yes. This one here, I'm not sure.
The one that has the MySpace information?
Yes, that's correct. And if you could erase that portion for a moment, please. I see of interest here an index, which appears to be a default page at the MySpace profile, so it's a profile. And I see view profile, and I see a token ID. Again, this could be something that the user selected, and that availability of the URL to be selected might be the cause of a cookie on the system.
Let's see, that's 519. If we could have 520 through the end of the page. Anything different there than what we've seen earlier?
This one here is slightly different. The first one, line 520,
How so?
it says profile myspace.com index, question mark, user action, user view profile, and friend ID. This appears to be something, again, it appears that it might be a auto-generated option based on a cookie on the system.
Okay, this indicates,
Number of time visited. These two items here, again, appear to be auto-generated adware of some sort.
Okay, if we could have 522 through 525. Okay, I think 522 actually starts on the page ahead, but it starts with page add to. Is that the auto-generated information?
I apologize, I couldn't hear the question.
522, this is the bottom half of it on the printout, but it appears to start with the http:// add to. Is that one of the auto-generated
I believe
entries?
that's- Yes, correct.
Okay, so if we then go to 523, what can you tell us about that entry?
This appears to be an option of selecting to view an album with a friend ID indicated here, view album, which would support this first portion of the web address, view more pics, MySpace. Because it's intermixed with the rest of the history, it would support the possibility that it was auto-generated based on a cookie and the user selected that option. It's also further supported by the fact that the visited count is actually greater than 1.
724 is what?
524?
I'm
Again,
sorry, you're right, 524, I misspoke.
Excuse me. Again, I don't know what exactly this website or web URL refers to, but it appears to be auto-generated again.
All right, and then moving on to 525.
This entry 525 is a URL that's generated when someone visits an ID, a profile on the Facebook website. And either the person typed it in, which I doubt, it appears to be something that, again, might be a auto-generated option on the web page based on a cookie or possibly a bookmark.
Okay. Is that user activity?
Yes?
All right, then if we could get 526 through the end of the page.
Excuse me.
Taking a look at that, can you tell if any of that is user-generated activity as opposed to created by the system?
These 4 items here all occurred at the same time. And I would believe that this item here is where it started. And the rest being an asynchronous type response, they were recorded. And this appears to be adware or some type of auto-inserted part of the history. And this one here, it says, first item here says cache traffic, content, classmates online. Again, I believe that's some type of auto-inserted item.
How about once you get down to the view more pics, MySpace reference?
Yes, line item 531 has a visit count of 3, and the syntax supports, again, a possible user interaction. Because the construct of the URL is something that's probably auto-generated as an option on the web page, again, based possibly on a cookie or a bookmark.
If we could move down to 545. Through 550, if that could be displayed. Is this activity on Facebook.com?
Yes, it appears to be so.
User-generated activity? Somebody's sitting at the computer and they're on Facebook.
Yes, it appears to be that.
All right, I'm going to direct your attention to 166 in evidence, which is March 21st of 2008. The information at the top, the same as explained on the other report?
Yes, the columns are the same.
Okay. And if we could just display everything from number 1 through number 7, can you see that sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Now, the first entry is dated 3/20/08. If we could just jump to 3/21/08, and can you give us some indication, I'm sorry, 3/21/08 at 15:16 and 13 seconds. Give us some indication from there, entry number 2 through the bottom, what's happening on this computer.
Ending in 13 seconds, is that correct, the timestamp?
Yes, entry index number 2.
So these 3 items here have the same timestamp. These appear to be auto-inserted items here. And I believe that this is one of the items that was returned from the Google Chrome search originally.
Okay. Now, this is on a different date.
Okay?
We have moved to 3/21. Is there a Google search on 3/21 that we can see from this history?
Not that we can see here, but again, because I'm only dealing with the information presented in front of me without knowing the computer.
Yes, sir.
It could have been a bookmark,
Yes, sir.
so it could have gone right to this item.
Okay. User-generated activity,
Yes?
okay, through perhaps a bookmark, like you suggested.
Yes.
And what is that entry?
Can you clarify, please?
How does that read, that URL?
This one here is www.sci-spot.com/chemistry/chloroform chloroform.htm.
Now, the cashback program, does it display these websites live?
If the investigator, the person using the software, wanted to click on that item in the report, it would take you to, it would submit that as a request, and hopefully, if it still exists on the internet, it would present itself within the browser.
Okay. Would it be the way that website, if it still exists, looks today? Or would it be the way the website would have looked back on March 21st of 2008?
It would be whatever it is today, and it's possible that some content is static, such as a dictionary site.
Unchanged, you mean?
Unchanged, correct. More dynamic sites like a news or a dynamic content website, I would expect that it would be different.
Okay. So if you had an Orlando Sentinel link right here or a website, obviously it's going to look different today than it looked in March of 2008.
Yes.
Entry index numbers 5 through 7. What are those?
5 through 7.
Yes, let's start with 5.
Excuse me. Pardon me. In order for me to speak to number 5, may I speak to 6 as well?
Certainly.
These timestamps are the same. And in looking at the URL spelt, the first one here, number 5, the search term is ampersand Q for query how to make chloroform, spelled with an A. And the next item that follows is a similar but not the same URL that says how to make chloroform spelled correctly, and that final value of spell 1 suggests that Item number 5 was committed as a request to Google, and it produced the second item, which was a suggested spelling to the same query.
All right, so if I'm understanding you correctly, the user at the time had their Google search engine up, typed in how to make chloroform,
Yes?
and then hit return or enter or search.
Yes. Excuse me.
Entry number 7 then, how would that have been generated by the user?
Again, going back to number 3, if we're looking at an entirely different date, I would believe that some of these items might have actually been bookmarked.
If we could go to 8 through 12 on the next page. All right, do you see 8, 10, 11, and 12 being system generated?
Yes?
Okay, so then if we look at number 9, I don't know if we can zoom in a little better on that. How does this end up in the history?
This appears to be a result of a search for chloroform through Google, and then, or just a search for the word chloroform, and this is a result that was then generated by selecting one of the results.
Okay. If we could display number 15. The entry on 3/21/08 at 15:21 hours and 56 seconds, http://www.instructables.com with other information including making plus weapons plus out plus of plus household plus products / how does this item end up in the history?
I believe this was selected from some type of search results.
By the user, not automatically by the system?
That is correct.
If we could move to 21, 22, 23. Do you see that sequence?
Yes?
Okay, those all have the same timestamp.
Yes?
How does this information end up in the history?
Before I answer that question, may I see the item that follows that?
Certainly. If we can get them the whole way to the bottom, 8419.
Okay, these 3 items have the same timestamp. I believe this is the search result that was selected because of the URL encoding. When I say URL encoding, the %220 is a hexadecimal representation for space, and that's returned by the request. And in fulfilling that request, a JavaScript item was called, as well as another one here.
Okay. If we could have the next entries displayed. All right. Item 1528. How does that end up in the history? Can you tell from the record?
It appears to be something that was selected or bookmarked. Based on the chronology, unless there was a search that is not part of this report, I would suspect it was a bookmark.
Okay.
Unless the user could have typed it in as well.
Right. How about the entries that follow? Can you explain those?
Items 29, 30.
Yes, as we continue down the page.
I can't explain exactly how this item here would have returned, only because I am not familiar with what CBox, excuse me, .ws is. However, the 2 tends to indicate a server, a secondary server that fulfills requests versus a primary server. And the next item, being a different timestamp, is possibly something selected again in relation to the 2 preceding URLs. But that's the extent that I can explain that.
Okay. Okay, if we could move to entry 45. Actually, if you could give me 45 through the end. Okay, can you see entry 45 at 15:26 and 24 seconds?
Yes?
Is that a Google search?
Yes, it is.
For?
The words neck breaking with a space in between.
How do you know that?
You can tell by the syntax of the statement, the HL keyword has a value of EN for English, the ampersand Q for query, the definition, and the final item button equals G search, and there's no suffix to suggest a spelling suggestion. This appears to be a genuine search.
Okay. Entry 47 regarding Wikipedia. Is that related to that search above it in any way?
I can't say that it is.
Okay, so how does entry 47 end up in the history record?
This could be a saved bookmark, or it was manually typed in.
Activity by the user.
Yes.
Is 49 where it references MySpace activity by the user?
I believe so because of the added information in the URL that suggests that a token was submitted or recognized by the system.
And if we could move to entry 55. What is represented by this entry?
The URL here is from the facebook.com website. It can be looked at as a hierarchy or a path. It went to a subfolder inbox, and then the request was read message, and there was some information that followed it. Based on the syntax of the T keyword here, the T follows the question mark, and the 100 and the rest of the numbers Based on that length, I'm familiar with the Facebook profile IDs, and that is consistent with a profile ID, possibly. It could also be a transaction. And the M-box, I'm unfamiliar with that. That appears to be, again, a user-generated item, but possibly by result of selecting an item that was presented on the web page by process of a cookie or a bookmark.
And as we move past this entry on 3/21/08 at 1500 hours, 29 minutes and 10 seconds, if I may approach the witness with the remainder of the report.
You may.
Does that appear to be Facebook activity through the end of the report?
Yes, with the exception for 2 ad tracking items.
And if you could continue to flip through the
Oh, I
next
see.
several pages, is that all Facebook activity?
Yes, for all of these that I put here, page 13, yes. Again, there's at least 2 items in here that appear to be auto-generated ad tracking.
What time does the Facebook activity end? Can you tell from that history?
st of March 2008 at 3:37 p.m. and 14 seconds.
Were you asked to perform any other examination for the Orange County Sheriff in connection with this case?
No, not that I recall.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no other questions of the witness.
Cross-examination.
Excuse me, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
I'm trying to put a lot of what you have into context, and I want to go over it with you. Forgive me if I'm a bit repetitive as to what Mr. Burdick covered with you. Let's start off with actually, you were originally approached by Mr. Stenger, correct? Sergeant Stenger?
Yes, that's correct.
And the reason he approached you is because he was using your software and there was a bug in it.
Well, I would say there was an issue in the way it managed Firefox 2 history.
Right. He couldn't get it to work correctly.
The software functioned correctly in the state in which it was at the time dealing with Firefox 2 history. In this particular case, it was an extraordinary circumstance, an extraordinary version of the history.
But my question to you, sir, is he approached you because he couldn't get your software to work, correct?
He stated he could get it to work so far, and then it would not complete the decoding. That is correct.
And then what happened was you were here on a conference and you stayed up pretty much all night trying to fix it?
Yes?
Okay. And he gave you certain information to try and put all these searches into context, correct?
Can you clarify that question?
You don't just look at this blindly. You kind of have you get a little information about the case, right?
Yes.
Okay. And then you worked all night and you put something together for him.
Took me a few nights. Yeah.
A few nights?
Yes.
Okay. So you went back to Canada.
I was instructing a course here for 3 days, and on breaks, lunches, and when I finished class from 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. until 3 a.m. on the Friday before I flew out that morning, I was working on it.
Got it. So before you left, you were able to complete these searches for him.
Yes.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, you were hired for this case.
Can I clarify that? I
Sure,
didn't complete
sure.
the searches. I completed the decoding.
My mistake in the question. You completed your assignment,
Yes.
and then you were subsequently hired for this case.
I wouldn't say I was, well, can you clarify hiring?
Okay. You were asked to become a witness, an expert witness in the case?
Yes, and while it was explained to me that I didn't have to come from Canada, I agreed to, yeah, of course. So I didn't consider it a contract, or I was asked to come down as a witness, and I happily said yes, of course.
Okay. And you did that for free?
I'm here today without concern for remuneration, but from my understanding in some discussions that could be addressed afterwards, but it's not my concern.
Okay. You haven't discussed how much you're going to get paid yet?
Not worried about that,
Okay.
but we have.
I'm sorry?
We have as far as what the state is willing to pay, but that is not a concern to me.
Okay. Is it the advertising that's concerned to you?
I don't understand there is no concern for me to be here.
Okay. You're involved in in a high-profile case. You're aware of that, right?
Of course.
Okay. And this is your software that you're testifying about.
Yes.
Okay. And it's something you developed.
Yes.
Okay. And if I were to go to your website, would there be any advertisements about you testifying in this case?
There is a link on the homepage that I put up a few weeks ago in regards to a specific and single article that referenced my name and the software. And I only put that up recently, kind of a subtle way for people to see how cashback might have been used. Now, insofar as to support or to explain, excuse me, your reference to the word concern, Firefox 2 is long ago deprecated, and at the time it was in transition to version 3. Most people were already adopting version 3, so it was a vendor's choice as to whether to go back and recode against a soon-to-be obsolete version, and that's kind of where we are today.
So if I go to your website, right under the name Cashback 3, is there a section there that says #1 choice for internet forensic investigations?
Yes?
And right below that is an article that you posted about your participation in this case?
Yes?
And do you consider that advertisement?
Of course it's an advertisement, but it's subtle. I mean, it's been 2 years now, and I haven't sent a single promotional anything to promote any involvement in this case. The only reason why I put that particular item up is because Sergeant Stenger sent me an email to indicate, hey, you might be coming down here after all. Your picture's here, it's talking about you. This is a small something to support the validity of the software for those who are looking at it.
It certainly doesn't hurt the promotion of your product, though.
No, it doesn't hurt,
Now,
but I'm not
I'm sorry?
I'm not overwhelmed with phone calls right now either, and it's been up there for a few weeks, so.
Could that be
the purpose wasn't to make money off it. The purpose was simply to support those who were deciding, is this a valid tool or recognized in the industry? And certainly in this case it was. It was a small item to put up there. So I was,
And that you're the number one choice for forensic investigation.
and that terminology's been up there prior to that.
Now, sir, in pulling these up, the first search on March 17th of 2008 for chloroform, how long is the user on that website before another website comes up?
I'm at a disadvantage. Can I have the information posted up on the screen, please?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
I'm showing you State's Exhibit 165.
Excuse me. And what was the question again, please? In
How
reference to-
long was a person who was visiting that site looking at the website for chloroform before another page came up?
This is a 57-page document. I'm not sure where I'm supposed to start looking.
Sure, I'll tell you, I'll direct you right there. The 1:43 PM and 41 seconds,
On which date? The 20,
March 17th,
17th?
excuse me.
and the time was 4 something?
1:43,
4:30.
41.
Okay, I'm at 17th of March, 2008 at 2:43 PM.
Yes, I guess 2:43, yes, there's an hour off.
Okay.
How long before someone goes to the next, before another page is gone to?
Oh, you're looking at the next item, which is 2:43, 41 seconds.
Yes.
Appears to be 7 seconds.
7 seconds, okay. So after looking at chloroform for the first time, 7 seconds goes by and then another page comes up.
Well, the first item that you referred to was the google.com homepage. And the second item was the search results at 41 seconds. Does that answer your question?
I think you did. It's 7 seconds, right, we're talking about?
Yes?
Okay. All right, now the next time chloroform is brought up at 1:53:25, how long is a person looking at chloroform before another page comes up?
You said 1:53, you mean 2:53?
I'm sorry, 2:53. I'm off and out.
Okay. Okay, 2:53:25.
Correct,
I have a reference to Wikipedia.
right?
Okay, so I'm there. What was your question, sir?
The next time another page comes up,
1 second later?
okay? So you got 7 seconds, then 1 second, correct?
According to the history, yes.
Okay. Now,
Now, I should explain something before we go. I know where you're going with this question about the seconds and the time elapsed. but
I don't
won't
want you
answer-
to, I want you to just answer my questions if you
Certainly,
can.
okay.
If you feel you need to explain, we can.
I object when the witness is trying to respond to the context of Mr. Baez's question.
Sustained, did you finish answering the question, sir?
Thank you, Your Honor. The purpose of my role is to decode the history. By reviewing the timestamps that were decoded, we have a chronology. Now, certainly, one of the checks and balances from a forensic perspective is to take the results and then if they're not, or if they raise questions, such as a 1-second disparity, how is it humanly possible to get a result and then go on to something else? And how is that done? Based on the clues left behind in the beginning part of the chronology, one might try to replicate that using an experiment or a series of experiments. Those were not requested of me, nor did I do them.
I totally understand.
So I can't speak to why there might be a 1-second discrepancy between two visits.
No one's asking you why.
Okay.
and Mr. Bradley, we totally understand. I'm just trying to get the facts of what you got in the history.
Fair enough.
Okay. Thank you. Now, sir, the subsequent to that 1 second, there are some other Wikipedia searches for peroxide and things like that, correct?
Yes?
Okay. And then someone types in at 258:38, exactly what?
Excuse me. 258:38?
Yes.
I can't say if someone necessarily typed this in, but it's a reference to Wikipedia, and there's a search, a consistent search definition for self-defense.
Okay. So maybe someone typed it in or somehow the screen ended up with self-defense on Wikipedia.
Well, I've gone so far as to prepare for today, and I've actually visited at least Wikipedia's website. And my own common knowledge of the Wikipedia is it tends to underscore keywords within documents. So as you're going through, it's just as easy to click on an item, you stay within the Wikipedia website, and lo and behold, you have a new item registered.
And for those jury members who are not familiar with Wikipedia, a page will come up and it'll describe an article, and then it might have a link to another topic
Within that
website.
article. Yeah, Wikipedia is a new name for encyclopedia.
Okay. So basically, at some point, self-defense became a topic that was looked at on this computer.
Yes.
Okay. And after that, at 258:58, it's reality-based self-defense, correct?
I see an acronym, if that's what it stands for.
Okay. Do you have any cause to doubt that based on what you're reading?
I see RBSD at the end of the URL, so I don't know what that represents.
Okay. What about the next, at 2:59:08? That would have been 10 seconds later.
Yes, that one ends in hand-to-hand combat.
Did the investigators inform you that hand-to-hand combat has anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Then after that, you have at 3 p.m. and 14 seconds, head injuries.
Yes, that's correct.
The investigators inform you that head injuries had anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
And then, I guess, what is that? 1 minute later, a minute and a half later, you have middle meningeal, I'm going to butcher this word, meningeal artery.
Is that, excuse me, line item 483?
Yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Do you know what that is, sir?
No idea.
Okay, that makes two of us. Did the investigators tell you that that has anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll look at the next one, which is, I guess, 1 minute later, 1 minute and 30 seconds later, 40 seconds?
Ending in ruptured spleen.
Yes, ruptured spleen.
I was not made aware of that being in any relevance.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, 35 seconds later, what's the next search?
Chest trauma.
Did the investigators tell you that has anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
And those are much longer times that have been spent on the chloroform topics, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then the next search at 30456, internal bleeding.
Yes?
The investigators tell you that anyone was internally bleeding 3 months prior to this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Then at 3:05:47, I guess that's like 30 seconds later, somebody types in hypovolemia.
I can't say that someone typed in
I apologize.
hypo, but obviously somehow that was referenced.
So somebody's looking at hypovolemia.
Yes.
Did the investigators tell you anybody had hypovolemia in this case?
No, sir.
And then after that, you got some Facebook and some other searches that have no relevance, correct?
That appears so, yes.
Okay. All right, now let's go to March 21st. If we, I've got that one.
Okay.
May I approach?
Thank you.
Mr. Brantley, if I could direct your attention to the first chloroform search there. Now, I catch that at 3:16:30, is that correct?
Well, you made reference to first chloroform search, and if in your context of search you mean referencing anything to do with chloroform, there's 2 records prior to that, so.
Okay. What time do you have? Oh, am I going backwards here? What time do you have the first or the 21st?
Line item 3 at 3:16 PM and 13 seconds.
And 13 seconds or
Yes.
30 seconds?
1-3.
Okay. Is that a MySpace before that? Just before that? Do you see a MySpace before that one?
No.
Okay. And that's the first search at 3:16:30, correct?
I'm sorry, I don't think we answered the first one.
The first chloroform.
There's a chloroform search at 3:16 and 13 seconds at scispot.com.
Okay.
And then 2 entries afterwards is a Google.com search for chloroform.
Okay, let's go line by line if we can.
Certainly.
How many seconds is the first search?
Excuse me. The line item 3 at 3:16 PM and 13 seconds for scispot.com.
Yeah.
And then the difference between that and the next search at 30 seconds is approximately, make me do my math, 17 seconds.
17 seconds? Okay, and then going to the next page.
And what am I looking
How
for?
many seconds before the next page?
See, I don't quite understand when you say next page. I have
The next search or
well,
entry that you
the
have.
next item with reference to the word chloroform or a portion thereof is line item 7 at 3:18 PM and 55 seconds for scispot.com chemistry chloro2.htm.
And how many pages is that? I mean, how many seconds is that?
From the prior one,
Yeah.
well, you have 1 minute at 17:30, 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 25 seconds.
Okay. And then what's the next search after that? Or what's the next page that comes up?
Well, the next, are we referencing the word chloroform, or are we?
Anything after that.
Okay, the next item is entered at line item 9 at 3:19 p.m. and 3:19:16 seconds at druglibrary.org, and it's a big long URL that ends in chloroformhabit.htm.
Right. And what does that come to? How many seconds is it before it goes to that page?
21 seconds.
21 seconds. Now, I want to make sure I caught something. When you gave us the 2 minutes and 25 seconds, were there any other pages that came up in between those?
I'm trying to remember which one I started with to do that math.
Okay.
I believe it was line item 5 and line item 7. There was one item in between at the same timestamp as line item 5. So there's nothing else in between.
Okay. All right. So that's obviously the longest time anyone spent looking at chloroform so far.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Okay. And when you say the chloroform habit, can you read that the one that we're at now that took 21 seconds?
Excuse me, yes.
Can you read the whole portion of what that says?
The URL starts with http://www.druglibrary.org/Schaeffer, SCHAFFER/history
Yes.
/E1880/chloroformhabit.htm.
Okay. Did you look at that page at any time?
Matter of fact, last night I did.
Okay. And that's talking about somebody having a chloroform habit in the 1800s?
I remember the 1800, but I didn't read the article.
Okay. It's a blog, right?
It didn't appear to be anything more than just information. So I don't know if it was a blog, but there was information that seemed to be, a person put it there.
Right. Somebody's writing about somebody in the 1800s having a chloroform habit.
I would agree with that.
Okay. And then how long before the next, what's the next page actually?
The next page, sorry, search.
Yes. Would that be the self-defense search next?
The only item I see on here is weapons out of household products.
Okay. And what time do you have that at?
3:21 p.m. and 56 seconds.
Okay. And that has to do with making weapons out of items at your house.
Well, it's suggestive of what it might contain. I couldn't tell you what it actually pointed to.
Did you look at that?
Nope.
Did the investigators let you know that somebody was making weapons in their house and that was relevant to them?
No, they did not.
Okay. And then after that comes the searches. What's the next search that you have?
Now you said search, just a search.
Yes. What's the next page that comes up?
I believe item 45 at 3:26 p.m. and 24 seconds, a Google search with the terms neck breaking.
Now, prior to that, do you have anything on Google books, self-defense for women?
I'll go back 3 pages and read each item. at this point back to page 3 of the report. I don't see any references to a book, unless you can assist me.
That's self-defense for women?
Is that a question?
Yes, I'm asking.
I cannot find anything here with self-defense for women.
Did you look that up to see what that was?
When you say that, look that
That
up.
specific entry?
Again, I'm trying to find the entry to which you're referring to. I'm not able to find anything about a book,
Okay.
unless you can enlighten me.
Sure. What line are you on? I apologize.
Sorry, I was lost.
Sure. We left off. Here, right?
I'm actually working my way back to here. I think it might be another page or two ahead.
We'll go over these.
Because I think it was at 1526. I wasn't mistaken. And one more page, I think I've done. Is it up in there somewhere? I can break it.
Yeah. Go back so we
Okay.
can stay in chronological order.
Okay.
I don't have this, so I'm looking at it on a screen. Before we went there, we were here, correct? Making household weapons.
I believe so.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. Can you give me that entry that we were at, sir?
Certainly. Line item 15 at 3:21 p.m. and 56 seconds. Making weapons out of household products.
(3:21, 15, and 16 seconds, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. After that, you have on entry 8401, blogger.com. Is that correct?
8407?
I have 8401 at 3:19 and 4 seconds.
I might believe that we are referencing two different reports. I'm not sure.
Okay. I'll just move further along because
Excuse me.
do you see at (3:23 and 8 seconds, themorningnews.org?
Yes,
Okay. And what is that exactly?
32308. The URL states themorningnews.org/archives/opinions/Kevin Fanning's Home Security Basics.
So do you know what that site's about?
I have
Other
no-
than home security basics
I have no
by
idea.
Kevin Fanning?
No, sir.
Okay, you didn't take a look at that.
That is correct.
And then the next one is,
So it starts with blogger.com.
correct. Does that reference preparing for zombie invasions?
Well, there's reference to those words, zombies are coming. It's a very long URL. Hope you don't want me to read.
And nobody told you zombies had anything to do with this case?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, all of these searches and all of this activity appears to be surfing rather quickly through the web. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, again, it depends specifically on the type of URL and the syntax of the URL as far as what's taking place. There's what you see in front of you taking place, and there's stuff that happens in the background. In order to attempt to compare these results and speak to this with some sense as to what's happening when and how, I might try to duplicate this step through. Unfortunately, being almost 3 years later, I doubt we'd have much success. But I couldn't assume that the one regarding warning news is, if I could repeat that, the morning news may very well be something that the user accessed, and the similar timestamp could be something that was made available on the website as a clickable option based on a cookie. Given the unique syntax of this, I don't know the defendant, but I couldn't know if that was selected or not. It could be something that was auto-inserted. And I base that answer on the fact that the two timestamps and the one following it are identical, as well as the one that follows that.
So what you're saying is basically there's only limited things you can tell from this information.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, if you go to 3, 25, and 37 seconds. That would take you to funny.com.
Funny.co.uk.
And that would be funny household weapons.
That's how that is completed, that URL, yes.
Okay. And then subsequent to that, it looks like there might be some banner ads.
Yes?
Correct. And then you've got the neck breaking at that time. On
At
3/26/24.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And how long is someone on that website before or after that query before they click fightingarts.com?
One minute and 54 seconds.
And that's a kung fu website, right?
I wouldn't know, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I can only speculate.
Did you look at fightingarts.com?
No, sir, I wasn't asked to.
And all of these searches revolve around funny household weapons, using household weapons, self-defense, and fighting arts. That's all within the same sitting. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, with what we've covered so far, I would agree with that.
And then after that, you have the word shovel, correct?
Yes, Wikipedia.
Okay. Are you familiar with the movie Shovel?
No.
Okay. Are you familiar with any terms other than the literal meaning of shovel, right? Any other terms that is used for?
No?
Okay. Now, when showing and when talking about all of these, you were hired in 2009?
I was not hired.
You were consulted in 2009.
Yes?
And that was only a few months after this case came about, correct?
Apparently so. Yeah, well, excuse me.
Object to the relevance, Your Honor.
I could tie it up.
Overrule at this time.
A lot of these websites would have still been active at the time, so you could actually go to the links and give a clearer understanding to the jury exactly what's on these websites, right?
I don't have any knowledge of when the computer was seized, but if it was any time within reason of the dates that we're looking at here today, I would agree with that.
Okay. So wouldn't the better evidence be when you're looking at household weapons, funny household weapons, making chloroform and things like that, wouldn't the better evidence be to show a jury the actual page as opposed to a link?
Sustain.
The link only gives you so much information, doesn't it, sir?
Yes, correct.
And in fact, the link doesn't tell you anything that was on that website.
That's correct.
And in fact, these websites could be, as some indicate, jokes,
Yes,
and some could be having to do with self-defense,
yes,
and some could be with kung fu,
yes,
and some could be having to do with chemistry,
yes,
some medical facts like the the internal bleeding and the hypovolemia and things like that.
yes, I would agree with that.
So there's a whole array of what these things could mean, or actually, let me rephrase that. There's a whole array of what these things could actually be that the reader is looking at, correct?
Yes,
And you can't even testify as to whether the user is even looking at this stuff.
that's correct.
Because sometimes people are texting while they're on the computer.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to him asking him to speculate what's going on.
Sustain as to the last question.
A computer examiner can never testify that a person is actually reading what's on the page, right?
Not without a security camera watching over them, that is correct.
And a computer examiner could never testify as to whether a person got a phone call during any of these searches and directed their attention.
Same objection as to speculation.
Sustain.
At the end of the day, sir, the information that could be gleaned from these is very little without the actual pages. Wouldn't you agree?
I think that the information that can be gleaned from here can have great context depending on the circumstances and the information by the person reviewing the information.
Let's talk about context for a moment. You have 7 seconds, 1 second, 17 seconds, 2 minutes and 25 seconds, and 21 seconds total for chloroform, correct?
Well, those are the times that were seeded in the computer. I can't explain how often, or excuse me, how much time was actually spent reviewing the page.
But before the next page was selected.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, let's also keep in mind that we're talking about Firefox, and I have no knowledge about any other browsers or other programs that may be on the computer.
I'm sorry?
I have no other knowledge about other other cache or history analysis, other browsers. Windows, for instance, comes by default with Internet Explorer. Many people in my experience have used more than one browser. We're talking about Firefox all by itself.
I understand. So what you're saying is that someone could be, of course, looking at multiple browsers, and that would even lessen the time that we're talking about.
Yes, there's many explanations.
And we're really talking just a little bit over 3 minutes of time before in total, are we not?
Yes, I would agree with that.
And you were only given the computer, well, let me ask you this.
Excuse me.
As far as how many months were you asked to look at as far as the computer's concerned?
I was only asked to try and decode it, and in that process, I did my own attempts to validate at a cursory review that everything was at least properly decoded. I went so far as to confirm that chloroform did exist, and in that process, I had other items of interest that came to the forefront. Beyond that, I was not asked to do any continued review or experiments or so forth.
So the only dates range that you were looking at is the month of March?
Me looking at it in the month of March?
Yes.
I
Or
never
you
looked at
weren't
that.
even given the whole,
I didn't look at it in the month of March.
okay.
I looked at the data December 2009, and in preparation for my testimony this week, I have since reviewed what I disclosed to the Orange County Sheriff's Office through Sergeant Stenger.
So you weren't even given the full month of March as to all of the computer activity to look at?
That is correct. All I have is what I worked with.
Okay. And so you can't even testify to this jury, out of this 3 minutes, how much time was actually used on that computer on the internet?
That is correct.
Okay. So if there's 50 hours or 250 hours, you can't really put into context how much that 3 minutes is in relation to how often not only one user, but multiple users were on the internet.
I think that is incorrect. I think what the history represents is a chronology of events that took place with the Firefox browser, period. Some items appear to be definitively a user-generated action. Some appear to be stuff that's happened in the background. To that extent, I can't disagree that this did not happen. Beyond that, I can't say how much time was spent using Firefox to look at an item any more than I can say whether other evidence exists in the case that I have not been privy to.
No one's saying that this didn't happen. What I'm saying is that if you take into consideration Firefox, Internet Explorer, Netscape, and the Safari browsers that were on this computer, you can't put into context how this 3 minutes is in compared to how many hours were on the computer during the month of March.
That's correct.
Okay. And in fact, this could be a very minuscule period of time compared to how much internet activity was actually done on this computer during the month of March.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. He's asking to speculate. He's already answered that he didn't have anything other than this history.
Sustain.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I appreciate it.
Any redirect?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mr. Bradley, starting off with the beginning of your cross-examination, the issue that Sergeant Stenger ran into was with decoding the deleted history from the Firefox browser, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. Why was he unable to complete that decoding, in your opinion?
There was scarce documentation available, and there was no tools in the industry available to do that.
All right. So when you were provided with this information, you were able to utilize the tool that you had already developed and add whatever other knowledge you had to complete the decoding of the entire history.
Yes, correct.
Is that correct? Okay. And you said that this event where you worked till 3 in the morning to complete that decoding took place in December of 2009?
I believe so, yes.
Were you familiar with the fact that the events in question took place in June and July of 2008?
I don't recall the date parameters except that it happened quite some time ago.
You had indicated that a lot of websites are dynamic, they're not static, they change very rapidly over time.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Would you include an 18-month time span within that time frame of having websites change dramatically?
Yes, websites would change in that time period.
Now, when Mr. Baez was going through the amount of time spent at each site, 7 seconds may be all it takes to type the word chloroform into the Google search engine?
Well, yes, that's possible, but I think in the context of Mr. Baez's suggestion, the search had already been committed and the results were 7 seconds later.
Okay. So you type in the word, you hit search, and then it returns a result within a certain brief period of time.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And you have options, do you not, whenever you put a search term into Google?
Yes,
Okay, and then the user selects options based on what Google returns.
that's correct.
Would it be fair to characterize this block of history, of internet history, as surfing the web for information about weapons and chloroform, how to make chloroform, those types of things?
Yes,
And when someone types in to a search engine how to make chloroform, maybe they're trying to figure out how to make chloroform.
Objection, Judge. Calls for speculation and leading.
Sustain.
excuse me.
Now, when you're dealing with Wikipedia, all of the, I think you called them hyperlinks,
Yes,
don't necessarily keep you on the Wikipedia page, do they?
they tend to, but not always.
Okay. Can it redirect you to another page if you click on a link and Wikipedia might not have that information, but another website might have it?
Yes, absolutely.
And certainly you cannot tell from the internet history that you examined whether or not items were printed off of the internet for later review.
That's correct.
Can the content of any of the websites be derived from the internet history data that you discovered?
Can you rephrase or repeat the question, please?
There was some inquiry about what was actually displayed on the website at the time the search was made.
Right.
And you said the passage of time affects how that appears,
Yes,
how the website would appear. Can you tell from the internet history exactly what would have appeared on the website when you're looking at that history 18 months later?
no, I cannot.
Were you asked only to review this deleted history to decode it
Yes,
and to tell us, and ultimately the jury, what searches were performed for a particular time frame?
yes, but I wasn't given any time parameters. I was just simply instructed to decode the entire file with some emphasis on a particular keyword.
The searches on 321 as a whole, from the first one that you mentioned to the last one that we talked about dealing with weapons and things like that, that whole time frame encompassed an hour, correct?
I believe so.
And if I may have the first page of
Excuse me.
the report from 321. Entry number 3, the www.scispot.com chemistry/chloroform. How many times was that site visited?
According to the history, 84 times.
Thank you, that's all I have, Your Honor.
Recross as to those issues and those issues alone.
Would you be looking for this as well, sir?
I might be. Okay. May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
Excuse me.
I'd like to show you your, actually, is that that's a copy of a report you submitted in this case, sir?
This is not a report that I submitted, but it's a report that appears to be created by somebody else.
Okay. And the site for SciSpot.com, how many times does it show that it was visited?
Could you assist me, please, in locating this?
He's asking him to testify off of somebody else's report.
Is that somebody else's report, sir, or is that your report?
It appears to be someone else's, Your Honor.
Objection sustained.
May I get that?
Certainly.
Does this appear to be a cashback report?
Yes, sir.
And there are only one visit to SciSpot.com, isn't it correct?
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 7 minutes before Is Sergeant Stinger still in the building? He's needed in Judge LeBlanc's courtroom. Verify if he's still in the building, please. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the time is now approximately 7 minutes to the hour 5. We will recess for the evening. I'm going to ask that you not to discuss this case among yourselves, nor with anyone else. Any additional instructions on behalf of the state or the defense?
Nothing from the defense, thank you.
You may begin your recross.
May it please the court, Mr. Verdict. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Mr. Bradley, we left off yesterday discussing the internet history that you were researching, and I want to kind of catch up so I could pick up where Mr. Verdict left off. Now, you had testified that you had the headers and footers of the entire history. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And what that means for us non-computer people is that you believe you captured the whole thing.
Yes, correct.
Okay. So the entire history, internet history from March 1st, was it?
I don't recall the start date of the actual history.
Okay. Basically the month of March.
I believe I recall mostly March being part of that.
Okay. And you were asked to do this because Orange County had run a net analysis.
Objection outside the scope. Redirect.
I don't believe it's outside the scope, Judge.
Overrule at this point.
Orange County had run a net analysis on that. That's a different software, right?
Yes, and my understanding is that it was not able to parse the file.
Okay. And your software that you developed is a competing software to that one, right?
In so far as the history component is, that could be perceived as the case, yes.
And were you given the 8,877 files in individual internet history records from the net analysis?
I'm not aware. This is the first time I'm hearing about quantities relating to history files.
Right. But you were given, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
I was only provided one file, which was the deleted Firefox 2 history.
Okay. And you were only able to find 8,557. Is that correct?
If that's the number you have, I'm not going to disagree with it.
Okay. Do you have your report? I want to make sure we're all accurate.
I do not have a report here with me.
Okay. If I showed you a copy of your report, would that help you refresh your recollection?
I believe so. Is it
May I?
authored by me?
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
You may.
sir.
Oh, I see. Thank you.
Does that refresh your recollection, sir?
Yes.
Now, yesterday, when you mentioned the 84 visits to the SciSpot.com, you don't have 84 URLs in your internet history, do you, sir?
That's correct.
So what you only have are the two that was mentioned in your printout,
The two,
the two SciSpot.com.
I'm confused as to which report you're referring to.
Your internet the report admitted into evidence.
We were looking at two reports yesterday, so
If I may approach the witness, Your Honor, I'd like to show him state's evidence 166.
You may.
I'm showing you, sir, the report for March 21st.
first, and this report was created by someone else on June 3rd. I agree that it is a report by my software, but I did not create that report.
So you didn't perform this report at all?
That's correct.
And you can't make any representation as to the validity of a report that you did not prepare.
Well, that would be correct. I can only speak to so far as what the format appears. I recognize the report format.
And as far as what you saw in this internet history, all that you have testified to, or all that you can testify to, are the actual URL links that you have viewed as a result of the work you did,
That's correct.
which do not include 84 hits to the SciSpot for chloroform, which do not include 84 URL visits to the SciSpot.com.
I should explain that a history keeps track of how many times you visit in the form of a counter. You would not expect to find 84 separate instances of a URL or web record. Each record contains its own counter. Does that answer the question?
But you would see if it was visited on March 2nd, correct?
It only maintains the last visited timestamp. So there could be a number of times a particular website was visited, and it only maintains the last time it was visited and increments the counter for each time it's visited.
And each time the page refreshes,
That is correct.
it would hit again, correct?
Yes, correct.
And you don't know how often this page refreshes itself, do you, sir?
I could speculate.
Now, we don't want you to speculate, sir. You can't testify to that, can you, sir?
That's correct.
And that would, of course, depend on the page itself and what is set up by the website, correct?
That is correct.
Now, Ms. Drain had brought up to you about the pages not being shown to the jury because you had gotten the file much later, correct?
When you refer to files, can you clarify?
The internet history files, you were brought in 9 months later.
Yes, insofar as what they represented, that's correct.
But you're aware that Ms. Anthony voluntarily gave her computer on July 16, 2008, are you not, sir?
Outside the scope of direct and
Sustained.
irrelevant.
Judge, I don't believe it's outside the scope. It was brought up
Sustained.
completely. Now, there are no other internet searches that have anything to do with chloroform in April 2008, May 2008, June 2008, or July
Scope of
2008.
direct, redirect.
Overruled.
Insofar as the data that I looked at, I don't recall anything outside the month of March.
Okay. So all of those months, there's not a thing having to do with chloroform.
Correct.
And Ms. Drain Burdick had also mentioned that there is nothing preventing, well, let me rephrase that. Ms. Drain had mentioned to you about printing out pages. Do you recall that line of questioning?
I do recall the question.
But you can't speculate as to whether a person printed out any of these pages, correct?
That is correct.
In fact, you have no evidence that any pages were printed out.
That's true.
Unless, of course, the printer leaves an artifact on the computer, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And none of that was recovered. There's no artifacts in the computer having to do with any printing for chloroform, correct?
I can't speak to what was found or not found on the computer. My scope in this matter relates to strictly the data.
Understood. And Orange County, when they consulted with you on this case, never told you that during the multiple searches that they did of that house, that they never recovered any pages having anything to do with chloroform, did they, sir?
Outside the scope of direct irrelevant based on hearsay information.
Sustained,
May I respond, Judge? It's not outside the scope.
sustained as to hearsay.
When you were given the data for this case, did it include any printed out pages having to do with chloroform
No,
from the
sir.
Anthony computer?
No, sir.
And as part of the file that you were given, or that you're aware of, there are no pages of having to do with anything to do with chloroform, are there, sir?
Well, this is a history file, so I wouldn't expect something tangible to relate to data. In this case here, I only had a historical record of what transpired.
I'm referring to any materials given to you by law enforcement.
That's correct. I had no other information but the data file.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir. If I can have it. No further questions. Thank you.
Any additional questions, Ms. Burdick? You may.
Mr. Bradley, the data file that you were given encompassed a period of time from March 6th through March 21st, correct?
Yes,
And that's all that you were asked to look at?
that is correct.
Okay. On the issue of the tabs, will the counter only refresh if the tab is active, meaning that it's being viewed or it's open on the computer?
There are a couple of things that impact how a page is refreshed. Number one is there's something within the actual file or the page. There's sometimes code written inside that'll say, please refresh me. For the most part, a page is not refreshed unless the user deliberately asks it to be refreshed.
And as far as the time sequences that were just alluded to, if somebody is on the computer and the tab is active, even if another window is open, will the internet history show the next window and then the one tab will remain active?
Yes, that's correct. You can visit a page on the internet on one tab, and if you select a hyperlink or an option on that page in Firefox 2, it will default to a new tab while keeping the other tab open until such time that it is actually closed.
All right. So any succession on the internet history does not necessarily mean that the first tab was closed and a new tab opened.
That is correct.
Thank you.
As long as it deals with those areas, tabs.
The site that we're talking about is a blog, is it not, sir?
I don't know what site we're talking about.
The one that Ms. Jane Burdick had just mentioned about the side spot.
Don't object outside the scope of redirect.
I don't believe so, Judge.
Sustain.
Anyone can write a blog, can't they, sir?
Objection.
Sustained.
No further questions.
May the witness be excused.
You may.
Thank you, sir. You may be excused.
Thank you, Your Honor.